It's finally here. February 9th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The NBA trade deadline has finally arrived. Will the Detroit Pistons make a move before 3 p.m. Eastern Time? And what moves could they possibly make? We're going to talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Ku Kahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Ku Kahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. I'm recording this right after the Pistons blowout loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll talk about this game a little bit later on, but that doesn't really matter right now. We know what really matters right now. It's February 9th. We've been hyping up this day for weeks, for months. It's the NBA trade deadline. At 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the NBA trade deadline will have arrived. And we're sitting at a point now to where we are still asking, will the Detroit Pistons make a singular trade before the NBA trade deadline? And we got a little bit of news or a little bit of some rumors before the Pistons game against the Cleveland Cavaliers from their athletic beat writer, James Edwards III. They had all the beat writers lined up on Bally Sports right before the game, and they were asking them questions about the trade deadline. What are they hearing? Blah, 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 all this stuff. And to wrap it up, Johnny Kane asked James Edwards, do you think the Pistons make a trade tomorrow? And he says, yes, I do believe they make a trade, and to watch out for the Milwaukee Bucks. So this. I'm not going to sit here and try to figure out who exactly the Pistons want from the Milwaukee Bucks. That's not where I want to take it. Where I actually want to take this is, who could the Pistons be sending to the Milwaukee Bucks? Who could the Milwaukee Bucks be even interested in? And depending on who they're interested in, does this mean that whatever player they're interested in, are the Pistons more willing to give this player up, or are they really shopping this player around? And the player I think they're interested in is Saddiq Bey. I don't think that they're interested in Nerlens Noel. At first I thought, oh yeah, this is just we all know Nerlens Noel is moving. Obviously, he's taking the easy way out. But then I went and checked the Bucks roster, and I don't really see why they would. I mean, unless if there's some Milwaukee Bucks fans listening, if you guys do need Nerlens Noel, let me know. I could be wrong. But looking at their roster, I don't really see why they would need Nerlens Noel. I don't see really like the big need for him. And I don't think the Pistons are getting. I don't think the Pistons would trade Bojan to the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks don't have any first-round picks until 2029. So I don't see Nerlens, and I don't see Saddiq. And then it comes down to Alec Burks or Saddiq Bey. And Alec Burks is the one player I believe pretty strongly probably will not be moved at the deadline. I think he's pretty likely to be on this team next year. I think this team likes the role he's going to be playing off the bench, the vet presence, his ability to score, and he's cheap. He's going to be a $10 million player or a team option, and I think they like that, and I think he's going to be on the team next year. So that leaves me with no other player to guess than Saddiq Bey. And if Saddiq Bey is who Milwaukee's interested in, and James Edwards is going out of his way to say, watch out for the Milwaukee Bucks, I do think a trade is going to be happening. I'm going to read in between the lines. I could be off with this, but I'm just going to go ahead and read in between the lines and say the Pistons, the player that's most likely to be traded from the Pistons at this deadline might be Saddiq Bey. Based on some of the things that the beat writers have leaked out, based on some of the things that we've heard in rumors across the league, based on some of the things maybe I've even heard, I think right now the guy I'd put the most money on being traded is Saddiq Bey. And if I had to go percentages, like if I had to go through each player percentage-wise, most likely to be traded, I'd probably put like Saddiq at like 40%, Bojan at like 25%, and then Burks at like 10%. Nerlens Noel, I think he's either getting traded or bought out for sure. So I'm going to put him at 100%. If there's any way that he finishes out this season with the Pistons, I'd be absolutely shocked. I don't see that happening. But if Saddiq Bey is traded, I think the Pistons need to make sure they do get a first-round pick for him. I don't know if he's actually worth a really good first-round pick. Probably not. We talked about a trade offer that we came up with on the last podcast where you're sending Saddiq Bey to the New York Knicks for Cam Reddish and that first-round pick. If the Pistons do move Saddiq Bey, that would be the trade I'd like them to make, not anything with Milwaukee. I don't see anything on Milwaukee's roster that the Pistons could be really interested in. They don't have any picks. I mean, the only thing I possibly could see them being interested in is, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry, but Marion Beauchamp. I think maybe they could be interested in him, a 6'6" wing. But outside of that, I don't see what Milwaukee has. And like I said, if the Pistons do end up moving Saddiq, I feel like they should really be trying to push for that Cam Reddish in the first-round pick that belongs to the Detroit Pistons. Get their own first-round pick back. If you're actually willing and ready to move on from Saddiq Bey, that's the trade I would like to see happen. So that's where I'm at with Saddiq Bey. Just real quickly, let's kind of go through all the other trade targets for the Pistons. I guess actually I should probably say, since today's the day, by the time you guys are listening to this, do I think there will be a trade offer or a trade made by the Pistons today? I'm going to go ahead and say no, man. I think there's been a lot of smoke, but I don't think there's fire to this one. It sounds like the Pistons are putting way too high of an asking price on Bojan Bogdanovic, on Alec Burks, heck, maybe even Saddiq Bey. And I don't know if any team's going to get desperate enough to actually give them the price that they want. So right now, I actually feel like this is the team you're going to be seeing for the rest of the year. And trust me, I don't want that to be the case. I'd like to see some new faces, see this team get switched around. They desperately, desperately need some kind of wing defense. I think they got to move Saddiq or Bojan. That's me. I think you can't have both of them and expect your defense to survive. You desperately need to get some wing defense on this team. If they can do that somehow, that'd be great. If they can get a first-round pick to use in trades this offseason, that would be great. But at this point, based on everything we've heard, I just don't know. I don't think the Pistons are going to make a trade. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But at this point, I just don't think they do. But moving on, let's go to what I'd like the Pistons to get for Bojan for the final time. What I would take for Bojan is any kind of unprotected first-round pick, salary filler that isn't like long-term salary. And depending on how good the first-round pick is, I don't need much else. Maybe I'll take a vet with him or something to help with the locker room. But that's about it. That's what I would want for Bojan. You guys know this. I'm in the camp of the Pistons desperately need a first-round pick to play with in trades this offseason if they're trying to make a jump next year. And they don't have any right now. I think Bojan's the only way they can get it. So if they get offered an unprotected first-round pick at this deadline, I think they have to take it. That, at least in my opinion. They need that first-round pick badly to use for trades. Heck, maybe to use a selection in this upcoming draft. But I think it's more important to have just a trade. And the Los Angeles Lakers, before we recorded this podcast, they just traded Russell Westbrook. Wojnarowski said before this trade with Russell Westbrook happened that the Lakers are still engaged with the Pistons or interested in the Pistons for Bojan Bogdanovic, but the asking price for Bojan has been too high for them, but they remain interested. In that trade for Russell Westbrook, they only gave up one of those first-round picks. And it was lightly protected, which means they can still trade the other one. And I saw this trade package get floated out. Let me know if you guys would take it. You get Lonnie Walker, that first-round pick in 2029, and Pat Beverly, and then you buy out Pat Bev, who's on an expiring contract. Would you guys take that trade? I think I would. You get that 2029 first-round pick, unprotected. You get Lonnie Walker, who I'm actually a fan of. I think he could be a pretty nice player. He's a young player. I think he can help them on the defensive side of things. So I'm interested in Lonnie Walker. I'd like that. But that's the kind of deal I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be that deal exactly, but that is the kind of deal I think the Pistons would have to take for Bojan Bogdanovic, or at least be offered to be considered. If it's not something like that, I don't think the Pistons are even considering it. When it comes to Alec Burks, if he gets any kind of first, I think they would take it, but I don't think his value is a first. I think the most they're going to get for him is like a second or two, and it's not worth getting rid of him at that point, I guess. And then Nerlens Noel, just get him out and just move him somewhere so they can use that disabled player exception and sign a 5, please. This team desperately needs a 5. They only have one in Jalen Duren, and this is a great way to segue on into the next segment. And in this game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, they got blown out. The size differential was just so insane. It looked like they were playing against high schoolers, the Cavs, that is. The Cavs looked like they were playing against high schoolers. It was bad. So let me know what you guys think is going to happen at the trade deadline in the comment section down below or over on Twitter. Do the Pistons make a move? But when we come back, we're going to talk about this game against the Cavs and why the size difference was so insane that it's so clear that the Pistons have to do something either on the wings or at the big man position to add some kind of size to this team. We'll talk about that when we get back. But first, I got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America. That is FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. And with the Super Bowl coming this Sunday, I've already told you guys before, I'm really feeling the Philadelphia Eagles money line against the Chiefs. I think that defensive line is going to put a ton of pressure on Patrick Mahomes. That's where I'm feeling right now. That's the kind of thing you can take over at FanDuel. I honestly would take the Philadelphia Eagles over 2 sacks in this game too. That's another thing you can do over at FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. I'm getting some tweet notifications from Chris Haynes. Let me look and see if this is Pistons related. Nope, it's about Malik Beasley. I have literally every NBA reporter's notifications on just in case it's not Woj or Shams that breaks a Pistons trade. I think you guys should have that too. But anyways, the Pistons got blown out against the Cleveland Cavaliers, 113-85. I don't think anybody had a good game outside of Jalen Duren. And even Jalen Duren, this was a really good learning experience going up against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But the one thing I have to talk about from this game, I don't want to dive in to just specific player performances yet. We'll talk a little bit about that later on at the end of the podcast. But if you watch this game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and yes, the Cleveland Cavaliers, I do want to say they're the top defense in the entire NBA. Okay, they're a really damn good defense. So it makes sense that they would come out here and just clamp up the Pistons. The Pistons aren't that talented. They're not a great team. So again, it makes sense that they would come out here and kind of just assert their dominance on the Pistons. I get that. I get it. Trust me. I understand. However, if you watch this game against the Cleveland Cavaliers and your main takeaway isn't the Pistons' main need is size, I don't know what game you're watching. For example, the Pistons love scram switching. It's probably the biggest, or not the biggest, the most used defensive coverage that they do this season. They've dip their toe in a little of a switch and drop coverage and trapping and hedging. They've tried to do a little bit of everything a little bit, but their mainly used defensive coverage, I feel like, has been scram switching. If you don't know what scram switching is, it's when, let's say, at the top of the key, the offensive team runs a pick and roll. The defenders guard in the pick and roll. They switch that. So then there's going to be a guard on the big guy rolling to the rim. And when that big man's rolling to the rim, the weak-sided defender for the Pistons, who's usually going to be a bigger guy than the guard, he then tells the guard, get out, get back to my corner. The guard runs to his corner, and then the weak side defender switches onto the big man. So it's kind of like a X cross of switching. After they switch the pick and roll, the guard runs to the corner, and then the bigger wing switches over onto the guy rolling to the basket before they can attack the mismatch of big guy on guard. I hope I explained that well enough for you guys to understand. So the Pistons love doing that, okay? The problem is when you scram switch, the purpose of scram switching is that you're getting a guard off of a mismatch, and the guy you're switching on to what was supposed to be the mismatch it has size, and now it's no longer that big of a mismatch. The problem with the Pistons is when they scram switching, They're scram switching mismatch for mismatch. It's not like they're switching a guard for a big guy who can handle himself. They're just switching mismatches. They might as well just keep the guard on the guy. It doesn't work. And the problem, one of the biggest problems with it, not only is it that they're just cross switching or scram switching mismatches, half the time they don't communicate correctly. So not only is it, even if you execute it correctly, you're still at a mismatch. Now you have to rely on them just to communicate correctly to get the mismatch to happen. And half the time that ends up in a guy being wide open because they don't communicate correctly. It's a tough situation for the Pistons. And it's literally all because the Pistons have no size. Bojan Bogdanovic is one of the worst wing defenders in the entire NBA. Saddiq Bey is one of the worst wing defenders in the entire NBA. Saddiq Bey's not even that big himself. He's 6'7", he's strong, but he's not big. He's not 6'8", 6'9" with long wingspan or anything. He's not big. Bojan Bogdanovic is bigger, I guess, but he's not a defender. He's not strong like that. He's not trying to body up defensively and really try defensively. And then they got undersized 4 in Stu at 6'8", and half the time they're switching Stu onto the guy in the perimeter, and now he's taken away from the rim. And even still, even if you want to say Stu was the guy you were scram switching with, even Stu against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, he looked like, I don't want to be disrespectful. When I was in high school and we played against guys, and this was something that I don't know if you guys know who he is. Sean Murphy Bunting. He plays for the Buccaneers. He's their cornerback. He was my basketball teammate in high school. His famous saying that he always used to do, he still does it when he comes back and hoop. But he says, whose kids are these? Anytime you get a switch on, you just can't handle them. He's like, whose kids are these? And I feel like that's what the Cavs were saying every time any Piston player switched onto them, besides Jalen Duren. Stu, Killian Hayes, Jaden Ivey, Saddiq Bey, Bojan, everybody. It looked like the Cavs were just looking at them and saying, whose kids are these? And it's a massive problem that the Pistons have not just had against the Cavs, who are unique with their size in the front court, for sure. They're unique with that. But it's not just been against the Cavs. They have had a major size differential in almost every game they've won against, or every game they've played, all season. And it's their biggest need in this offseason. And the good thing about that is if the Pistons fall out of one and don't get Victor Wembanyama, the next, outside of Scoot, the next, 6-7 guys I've been seeing are all wing guys. So hopefully they're able to attack that in the draft. But even still, they need to do something before the end of this season. It doesn't have to be a major deal, but they have that disabled player exception for that $5.3 million. Guys, if the Pistons don't use that player exception to get a backup 5, so Stu no longer has to play 5 when Duren goes out the game, I'm going to lose it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose my stuff. I'm going to spaz out. It's so blatantly clear that they need a backup 5. And they were supposed to have one earlier in the well, but apparently they came to this agreement that he just wouldn't play. He played 3 minutes tonight, but I don't even know why he played those 3 minutes. He was taken out immediately. What was even the point? I don't get it. So, and then in his 3 minutes of action, he took a pull-up jumper over Mobley and hit the top of the backboard. I thought it was going to shatter the glass. I don't know what that was supposed to do. I hope the opposing teams weren't watching that. I'm sure they're not going to watch Wade for him after that one. But look, they need to address the size for the rest of this year. They need to get back up 5. I wouldn't be mad if they went out and traded for a wing that had some kind of defense just to see what this team would look like and some of these young guys would look like with some kind of sense to their roster. Because this roster doesn't make much sense, and it hurts guys. It hurts guys. It makes it hard on them, especially defensively. So, I mean, that's where I wanted to go with it, man. They desperately need size. They don't have any size in this team. At the wing, at the center position. They have a little bit of size at the guard position in Killian Hayes and Cade Cunningham, but Cade's out, obviously. Jaden Ivey's not that big. So if you want to include Killian Hayes and Cade and say they have some kind of size there, I can buy that. But outside of that, they just don't. They don't have it. And you need that in today's NBA. Especially, by the way, if your main defensive coverage, you want to switch. Or if you want to scram switch. Now, they do more drop coverage with Jalen Duren. But if you want to switch with Stu, you need size to help out. You have to have it. And if you're going to scram switch, what's the point of scram switching if you're just scram switching mismatch for mismatch? It just doesn't make any sense at that point. So it's bad, man. It's bad. And the point of attack defense tonight from the Pistons on the wing positions where it was just piss poor. It was terrible. Karis LeVert felt like he was getting to the rim every single time. It was bad, man. So I think the main takeaway you get from this Cleveland Cavs game, this blowout of a game for the Pistons, is that they desperately need a backup five so Stu can go back to playing the 4 at all times, even with him not shooting well from beyond the arc. It's the only position that he has a chance at playing. He can't play the 5. Him and Jaden Ivey look like they were about to wrestle each other out there because Ivey just wasn't vibing with him at the 5. And it can be, I don't know who it's on, who was expecting what, who was right or not. But from the outside point of view, I can't blame Ivey because playing with Stu at the 5 is a handicap. It just is. It just is. So they need to get a backup 5 to play when Jalen Duren goes out the game. And they need some wing defense. And I'd like them to attack that for the rest of the year. It doesn't have to be some big trade where you're giving up a lot of assets. Like, just sign somebody that's sitting out there that can be a defensive player on the wing. It doesn't have to be some great player. Just be a defender or a backup 5, something, please. They desperately need it on this team. Desperately. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the things we saw individually from some players in this game. Stu continues to not shoot well from deep. He was 1 of 5 tonight. How concerned should Pistons fans be about Isaiah Stewart shooting from beyond the arc? We'll talk about that when we come back. But first, you guys got to hear from some of our sponsors. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So we've talked about Stu and his outside shooting a lot. At the beginning of the year, he was shooting really well from beyond the arc, but he has been struggling really, really, really bad. Like really bad for the last few months. So someone tweeted this at me. I'm assuming it was one of you guys, one of you listeners. You guys tweeted this at me. In December, Isaiah Stewart was shooting 36% from deep. In January, he shot 11%. And in February, he's shooting 17%. That's horrid. That's putrid. And look, I understand that he had dealt with a shoulder injury at somewhere in the beginning of January. I don't know how much that's still impacting him. He's still playing, and we haven't heard it still impact. So look, I'm not ruling it out, but I can't sit here and make that excuse because no one said that it's bothering him. He hasn't said it. The coaching staff hasn't said it yet still. So unless they come out and say it, I'm not ruling it out, but I can't just assume that's all it is. And if you want to be honest, the shooting was starting to go down a little bit before the shoulder injury. You could also argue that the shoulder injury happened beforehand. He was still playing through it, but that's all hypotheticals that we just don't know. The main thing we need to be talking about is this. And I'm not going to the point of, should the Pistons get rid of Stu? Should Stu be cut? Should Stu be traded? No, that's not where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with it is this. This should be the question that Pistons fans should be asking, that Troy Weaver needs to be asking. Is Isaiah Stewart, because I don't think he's a 10% three-point shooter. If he's that, good luck trying to last in the NBA. If he's actually a 10% three-point, good luck. I don't think he's that. So the question that they need to look at and need to figure out and come to an answer confidently. And they're going to have the rest of the season to find out. So the question is Isaiah Stewart closer to a 38% shooter from beyond the arc that he was in the first month or so of the season? Or is he closer to the 20% three-point shooter he's been over the last 2 months? Which one is it? They need to figure out which one he's closer to. I don't think he's as good a shooter, definitely not as good of a shooter as he was at the beginning of the year. I think he was on a hot streak. I'd like not to believe that he's this bad of a shooter. So they need to figure out which one is he closest to. And if it's closer to the 20%, I really struggle seeing how he fits, how he's going to be able to play consistently on a winning team then, if he's at 20%, if that's where he's closest to. If he's closer to 38, 39%, and he figures that out for the rest of the year, let's say he shoots like 34% for the rest of the year, or 33%, somewhere around there, then I think the coaching staff and the front office will probably feel a little bit more confident with him moving forward into the offseason. And I don't want to say they'd feel ecstatic, but I think they would be a little bit more confident or comfortable, I guess is the best word. They'd feel more comfortable with him moving forward. But that's a question they have to have an answer to. Because if you see Stu play the 5 tonight, not just tonight, but any other night, but it was really on display tonight because he was really just outsized. Mobley and Allen make him look like he's 6'2", It was bad. Okay, it was really bad. But you saw Jaden Ivey get into it with him on a few times on some pick and rolls. Ivey, it looked like one time wanted him to set a harder screen, and he didn't. He slipped. Then Stu wanted a post up. Ivey didn't want to give him a post up on Evan Mobley, and I don't blame him. Why are you trying to post up Evan Mobley, a defensive player of the year kind of guy? I don't know why you're trying to do that. Then Stu kept calling for it. Ivey eventually throws it to him. They turn the ball over. Stu slaps the ground. Then they turn the ball over on an inbound because they're not on the same play. They start going at each other. Look, a Stu at the 5 just can't work because he doesn't have the roll threat. He's not a good finisher around the rim. He can't get up off the ground, and he has terrible hands. There was one play in the beginning of the game. Killian Hayes had a pick and roll from Isaiah Stewart at the top of the key. Went to his right, snaked back to his left, drew Jared Allen to him, and then whipped a pass to Isaiah Stewart. It was a wide open dunk. I thought it was an easy dunk. Really good pass from Killian Hayes. And instead of it getting a dunk, Stu fumbled the pass, then went to dribbled it off his foot, and it was a turnover. So his hands just make it impossible for him to play 5. He's not a good screener. He doesn't put a lot of body into his screens. He doesn't have good finishing around the rim. He can't play the 5. He just can't. He can't do it. So his only way of living is at the 4. And if they believe by the end of this year that he's closer to what we've seen over the last few weeks from beyond the arc, then that's a problem. That's going to be a problem they're going to have to answer. But hopefully, I think all of us hope that he's actually closer to the guy that we saw in the beginning of the year. Maybe not as good, probably not as good, but closer to that. That's the question they need to figure out and they need to answer. So another takeaway I had from this game, the Pistons went back to starting Killian Hayes and Jaden Ivey together. And it just doesn't make sense to me what they're doing there. Why are they yanking these guys around and changing their roles all the time? What was the point? Because I was told the reason why they benched Killian Hayes when he was playing well was because Alec Burks provided spacing in the starting lineup, and they wanted to see Jaden Ivey run point. Did they not like what they saw from Jaden Ivey running point? I thought there was a mixed bag, but I thought we actually saw some promising things. Did they not like what they saw from Jaden Ivey at point? And that's why they brought, we got a deal. Is this the Pistons? Nope, it's not the Pistons. Sorry, guys. I got you guys super excited. Actually, you guys would have saw that already by now. The one I saw was Trailblazers are trading Josh Hart to the Knicks. That's what I saw. But anyways, my point is, did they not like what they saw from Jaden Ivey at point guard? Is that it? Or were they just trying to audition Alec Burks for opposing teams? I don't know. I don't really buy that because I feel like opposing teams, opposing GMs, 3 games, 4 games isn't going to change a guy value, especially a vet. If it was a younger guy like Cam Thomas, what he's done, okay, maybe. Okay. If a young guy came out of nowhere and just hit 40 points 3 straight times, then maybe. But Burks is a vet. They know what they're getting with him. So what are they doing? Why do they keep I don't get it. I really don't. I don't get it. And neither of them had a good game tonight. I don't think either of them had a bad game. I just don't think they had a good game either. They were kind of neutralized in this game by the Cavs perimeter defense. The Cavs perimeter defense was some of the best defense I've seen all year from any team that's won against the Pistons. Ivy couldn't get to the lane. He couldn't get by his guy. Nato was all over him. Even if it wasn't Nato, LeVert was even playing good defense. It was crazy. They were playing tremendous perimeter defense, and even Killian Hayes too. Nato was getting up into him, and neither of these guys got up the amount of shots that we're used to seeing them get. Ivy only got up 6 shots in this game. It's not because he didn't have the ball in his hands. It was because he was turning it over. He couldn't get to the rim. He had 4 turnovers. Killian only got up 9 shots. We're used to seeing him get like 13 shots up. Him and Ivy both getting up there. And they just weren't even able to get shots off in this game because of how good the defense were by the Cavs. So, my overall point, that was a long-winded way of saying, I don't know what the Pistons are doing with this starting lineup. I don't know if this is the lineup now they're going for the rest of the year. Are they going to bench him again? And then I really hope the Pistons stop. This coaching staff stops changing guys' roles so much after the deadline is over. Like once the deadline's done, I hope they're done with that. I hope whatever lineup they pick with, they stay with it and let guys get accustomed to their roles. Because I don't think changing guys' roles I don't want to say they did it all the time. But I don't want to say that changing guys' roles every now and then consistently just completely throws them off balance, but it definitely does something. Taking a guy, having him play different roles all the time, it definitely can have an impact on them, and it ruins some of their consistency. So I hope that the Pistons just pick a lineup, and after the deadline, after they make a trade, if they do, and just stick with it at that point. So we'll see what happens. But That's all I've got for you guys today, man. Hopefully the Pistons make a trade. I need the Pistons to make a trade. We need some new faces. We need some energy injected into this team, even if it's not even, it doesn't have to be some big trade, but they need some kind of injection of energy with this team because it's just not there from at this point. It's just not there. I would love to see it. I know you guys would love to see it. So hopefully it happens. Hopefully by the time you guys listen to this, there was a trade that happened after I recorded this. So hopefully that happens. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe, go Pistons, and peace out.